before the year, I would just say you're answering two questions. Is this team going to win a lot of games? Every winner of this award in its history has been at least 500. The team they played on has been at least 500. And about 90 to 95% of the winners have won 10 or more games. So yeah, like you can go 9-8 and win, maybe. But man, it would require an insane. Chris Johnson, when he did the CJ2K campaign, 2,000 yards, they won 8 games and he won. Drew Brees, when he broke a bunch of records, they were 500 and they won. Everybody else, it's like, you got to win a lot of regular season games. So, okay, there's filter number one you can put on this list. What are the teams? And therefore, it's like work the problem the team way instead of like, well, this guy's really good. Work the problem the team way. What are the teams you think are going to win a ton of games this year? Pretty good way to do it. Now, you would have had to have come up with Minnesota as a team you liked last year to bet Jefferson. And if you listen to our show, I liked Jefferson because we kind of thought the Vikings might be a little better than the market did. And then he would fit as a winner of this. But you got to like the team a lot. And like we could even stop there, just like here's one name to consider. Cooper Kupp's pretty low price to win this. Do you think the Rams are going to win like 11, 12, 13 games this year? If the answer is yes, then great, go bet. But like, like he was really good and he won this a couple of years ago and he's back for like, don't do that. Just start with the team. If the team stinks, don't make the bet. That'll be true with defensive player of the year when we do that too. So that's filter number one. And then the second question is really, really easy and it's really subjective. Could you see this player having a record, not good or great? All of these players are great. You're going to like all of them. Can this player have a record-setting offensive season? Reestablish records at their position? Can they do that? It's not that it happens every year, but man, it gets either really close or it gets broken every year, and that's the guy that wins. So just like, it can't be, well, that receiver's so good. Be like, no, he's got to be like the best ever that season to win. That's how you should be thinking if you want to bet this. So the offense has got to be insane. It's got to be able to produce a winner like that. Some offenses aren't going to be are not going to be capable of producing a winner like that. So is the team going to be good? Could I see this player having a record-setting kind of offensive season? Maybe you can't cross off everybody. Maybe you can't cross off even more than 60%, 70% of the names. But those are the only filters. And beyond that, like there are no predictors. It's just going to be something we do week to week, and we try to figure out who that record-setting player on the good team is going to be. I think so let's take the favorites as a group. I don't think you can necessarily cross off any of like Chase, Jefferson, McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Nick Chubb. Let's cut that off there. We could do position stuff, I guess, in the next segment too. I would say I don't think the Vikings are going to be as good. I think they are very unlikely to be a good team this year. So even though Jefferson's insane, I would never bet him. Agreed. And I would really worry about McCaffrey as an injury risk if I was going to bet him in a season-long award like this. Even if he was great when he got traded and he was so good, like that's great. Tyreek was really close last year. Can't cross him off. Chase is a monster. I don't think you can cross him off. Maybe if you like the other receivers a lot for the Bengals, maybe the opportunity is not there. But for the four favorites, at least, I'd probably cross off Jefferson as a bet. I'd at least caution McCaffrey, Chase and Tyreek Hill if you like them, Nick Chubb if you like him now. I think you can make that bet and feel okay about it.
So if we start there by eliminating Jefferson and McCaffrey while also acknowledging they are incredible players and should be top 3 picks in any draft, fantasy football draft, what are some of the names that you do like here towards the top of the board? And we'll work our way down.
There's a lot of narrative about this next player, but I think the narrative has created a price that I just can't really get to. And I think the team is almost a lock to win a number of games that qualifies him for success, to qualify him to get votes to win this award. And that's Stephon Diggs. This number is really, really crazy. So there are a bunch of places where he's 35-1 to win this award. And his body of work versus the other elite receivers is not that dissimilar. Has he had a Justin Jefferson kind of a season? No. And everybody's going to be but he hates everybody and he wants to get traded. And Stephen A. Smith's yelling about this all the time. And it's well, great. Do we know if any of that's really true, or is it just kind of rumor, maybe a little truth to it? Also doesn't have an impact on whether he can win offensive player of the year this year. So just as a price, it's well, do I want Chase 10 or Diggs 35? They're not that different. They're really not that different. So it's not that this is the great bet or this is the winner, but just if you're looking at okay, who are all the players who make sense? Who are on the teams that are the most likely to win all these games? What are their prices? That is one, Nick, where I definitely it was a little head scratcher where okay, I read all the stories too, but really that. So the 35 behind Justin Fields and guys who aren't going to win a lot of games just seem crazy to me.
And you know, I hope this is gonna. I want this to come across the right way, because like I respect these people a lot, and I mean that sincerely. Like really smart people that do fantasy football for a living, that enter like really like main event tournaments in Las Vegas, that like do this, like this is their livelihood, is covering fantasy football. Like all think like Stephon Diggs is like in line for an absolute monster season, like even better than he's had the last couple of years here. Like I've been pretty aggressively drafting Stephon Diggs where possible in the first round, whereas maybe that wasn't the case last year. And like I'm not saying he wasn't great last year or like there were 2 years ago, just that Ken, I think like the expectation amongst people that focus on this, just like stats for players as opposed to like win totals, like these two things can merge, right? They don't have to be exclusive from each other. I think people are like very, very bullish, like really smart people are very bullish on this being like a monster statistical year for Stephon Diggs. And you had mentioned this year being like, oh, maybe we should take a look at the quarterbacks here. And generally, like you would think if a quarterback's going to have a historic year, the quarterback wins MVP, maybe not offensive player of the year. I'll give you some names in a second here, but can you, for our listeners and viewers, talk about the quarterbacks in contention this year and your thoughts on betting or not betting those particular players?
There's just like a stigma, I feel like, among people who do betting content. There's like a stigma where it's like, well, you don't want to bet the quarterbacks here. And you like that gets priced into the market too. I was like pounding the table for Mahomes for offensive player of the year in the middle of last year, for people who remember. And people are gonna be like, well, Justin Jefferson won. Like, why are we bringing this up again? Be like, well, because Mahomes was viewed as like basically having no chance. He was like 25 to 1, 30 to 1 in the middle of the season, week 12, week 13, even really, really high prices. And then a bunch of people start coming out with like ballots if the season ended today, prominent NFL writers, and they all have Mahomes second behind Jefferson. And I'm like, so that's sort of my like, see, told you. Like, it's actually okay to think of a quarterback as having a chance to win this. Again, the key is not position. Like, people get this misconstrued and think, well, quarterback wins MVP and skill position then has to win offensive player because quarterback wins MVP. No, offensive player is about record-setting seasons. If there is a quarterback that is going to play this year that you think could have a record-setting season on a good team, he is eligible to win this. He is definitely eligible to win this, and one of Burrow, Allen, and Mahomes can win MVP if that happens. And your guy, let's say that's Jalen Hurts, or let's say that's Lamar Jackson, or let's say that's Justin Fields, or let's say that, and any quarterback you want, honestly, if you think they have a chance to have a record, that's the whole thing. Record-setting season. That's everything. Like, why did Brady win? Because he broke all the records. Like, that's why he won. It's like, well, he won MVP, he won like the double, but like, it was because of the records. That's why he won offense, because of the record-breaking part. The MVP was for the winning part. And the record-breaking was the offensive player of the year part. Like, Peyton Manning won this. Mahomes has won this. Drew Brees has won this twice. Like, I just, the stigma that like the quarterbacks can't win, you're thinking about the wrong way. It's not about position. It's about who can have a record-setting season. And sure, maybe that's not going to be a quarterback as often as everyone else or something. I guess that's the argument. But like, don't cross the quarterbacks. Like, I actually think that there's room for them to be valuable. I don't think I was like vindicated on Mahomes necessarily, but what we found out afterwards is he was way more in the conversation among all the people who vote than the market was ever pricing him at as part of like having a chance to win this award. So if we know that that's true now, let's make sure that that's a part of our handicap this year.
Ahead of week 1 of college football, I know there's a bunch of quarterback news circulating right now in the sport. What do you have for us here and how it impacts some big games coming up this week? I guess not all of the games are big, but a couple of them are.
Right. Yeah. Well, and some kind of big teams too. I think people who followed you did Miami versus Miami and the Feliz Navidad. I think people might have seen some reporting earlier this week. Tyler Van Dyke, Miami's returning quarterback. There were some rumors on some like fan blogs, basically, that he got hurt in practice and his status for the game was up in the air. That caused the market to respond a little bit on kind of some rumor that maybe he wouldn't be available, and he's pretty good. He wasn't great last year, but I think the expectation is he'll at least be better this year. That's kind of been at least put to bed for now. Mario Cristobal like addressed the media and was basically like, he's good to go. Like we expect him to start a quarterback. So market kind of basically went back to some of the original numbers that we saw, 17 in that game against Miami of Ohio. That game's on Friday night. A game coming up tomorrow, which we've talked about a lot, but like it is very interesting. It's also, there aren't a lot of games with small point spreads in week 1 because of the way teams make their schedules. So Florida, Utah is a really, really fun game. And had a ton of speculation about whether Cam Rising, Utah's starting quarterback, would be ready for this game. We've talked all offseason. Utah was like trying to rush him back, knowing that they really wanted him to play in this game. While they did that, their backup quarterback had like a medical emergency a couple weeks ago, and we didn't know if he was going to be ready for the game. All kinds of rumors. Is he going to play? Cam Rising, is he not going to play? Some indications earlier this week, Rising told some publication he was like good to go. That he was listed QB1 on the depth chart. And everybody's like, oh, maybe. And then kind of all the time, people that we would talk to, Nick, you and I, were all like, I mean, Kanish would come on the show basically and just say it so I can say it. Like, Cam Rising's probably not going to play in this game. And what gets kind of like circulated all today, Cam Rising's not going to play in this game. In fact, it'll probably be the third string quarterback for Utah that starts. So what happens in the market? This was a game that was like Utah more than a touchdown all offseason. Again, kind of a revenge game for Utah, if you believe in those things. Florida, Anthony Richardson beat them at the Swamp last year. Utah has a great home field advantage, and Florida is a little down. So I think the expectation was that Utah could really maybe roll, and now that's probably not what this is going to be. We've gone all the way down to Utah 4.5. There's a 4 on the board right now also. God, I mean, with Utah's home field advantage, you're getting pretty close to like, there's no difference between these teams on a neutral field with Utah's third string quarterback. It's all very interesting. So that's a spread to obviously monitor tomorrow too. You know, where does the number end up going? Is 4.5 the right number with a third? It's the total is also very low. It's 44. I think everybody expects no one to be able to score in this game. Florida's going to have trouble moving the ball because they're Florida, and Utah has a third string quarterback. So that stuff's all really interesting. The other quarterback injury, real quick, involves Iowa. So people probably remember this. Cade McNamara, who was one of the 2 Michigan quarterbacks the last couple of years, transferred to Iowa. And kind of the understanding was like, oh, like Iowa's finally going to have a quarterback. Like Spencer Petras was their quarterback. Like they've had like some pretty brutal quarterbacks.
Tim's brother.
Recently. Like now this is actually going to go pretty well. Well, a lot of rumors starting to circulate that Iowa will not have Cade McNamara in their opening game. They host Utah State. Now, not as dire as Utah against Florida, where like you can really lose that game. The spread in Utah State, Iowa is currently Iowa 23 or 23.5. But just like if you're thinking about betting Iowa in the game, or you like want some more information, worth checking out what Iowa's quarterback depth chart is going to look like. We don't have actual confirmation that McNamara is not playing as of right now. It feels like something that's going to end up being announced the day of the game. It seems like something that is likely to be true, but that's another quarterback injury that we have kind of looming in week 1. So kind of some fun stuff going on just from a news and point spread standpoint. Obviously, injuries aren't fun, but they are things that cause point spreads and markets to go crazy. And we had a couple examples of that this week. Utah would be the most prominent one, but obviously you want to check on Iowa before betting that game.